Welcome in, guys, to One Piece chapter 1111. My name is Sai, and today we are here to break down the latest chapter of One Piece and just talk a little bit about it. So this week, I think the best place to start off is with Oda's message about why he's taking a 3-week break after this chapter. So he did write a message online, and it says, "I'm taking a break, and it'll be 3 weeks because of the news of Toriyama-sensei. So I've been excessively worried about my health. It's not an illness, by the way, but I thought I would want to take a break to do some self-maintenance on myself, and maybe take some time to think about what is the One Piece. After all, I am a busy person." This message and explanation makes a lot of sense when you consider how close Oda and Toriyama actually are, and of course, with the funeral and with how crazy mangaka schedules actually are, 3 weeks just seems pretty appropriate. I do like how he throws a couple of jokes in here and there, like, hey, I need to think about what One Piece actually is. It's like, okay, Oda, good joke, man, good joke. Oda has already stated on record that he already knows what the One Piece is, and that he's actually told a couple of people already too. So him talking about, hey, what's the One Piece, guys? I need to figure that out, is a great old meme. But of course, since the One Piece hasn't been actually explained yet in the story, I wouldn't be shocked if he does make tweaks here or there. That's usually how these stories go, right? Nothing is set in stone until the week it's published. So maybe there is a chance that he is tweaking it a little bit, but I kind of doubt that, right? I feel like the One Piece is one of those things that you already have figured out from day one, and then after that, you kind of just add upon it, which is probably what he's doing here. But either way, don't want to look too deep into the joke. Let's get into the chapter now, and we are starting off with a color spread. And might I add, it's a very beautiful color spread because we have the Straw Hat crew, Bonney, Kuma, and Vegapunk, and they are riding on jellyfish. And I just gotta say it, man, but I absolutely love jellyfish, and I hate the fact that a majority of them are quite venomous, or else you would see a jellyfish tank in my background, if I could actually afford it. But yeah, jellyfish are cool, and the Straw Hats are riding them. So a couple of things to make note of about this color spread, which, you know, if you're new here, then I just want to say it, but I usually look really deep into these and try to find meaning where there's usually not any, but I think it's a lot of fun because sometimes Oda does like to leave some hints here or there. So the first thing that stood out to me about this color spread is that Usopp has been kicked out of the weak trio and has now been replaced by Bonney. And you can actually see Usopp in this color spread trying to claw his way back up to that trio. I'm not too sure what that means. Perhaps Usopp will get a nice power boost and it'll kick him out of that trio, but I think that's just a lot of wishful thinking. Or maybe this could just mean that Bonney is going to join the crew straight out, which I wouldn't mind either. Another thing I really liked about the color spread is Kuma in the corner, because he's just kind of eating his french fry bucket and looking up and smiling at the Straw Hats, and it just feels good, because he has sacrificed so much for this crew to survive and thrive, and here they are now, hanging out with his daughter even. Yeah, it's a really nice thing to see him in this color spread. Another addition I really enjoyed was Vegapunk talking to Frankie, because that hasn't exactly happened yet here on Egghead Island, right? Coming into this island, a lot of people, myself included, thought that Frankie would get some meaningful upgrades here or learn a whole bunch about technology here, which you could argue that he has, but he hasn't exactly had that one-on-one time with Vegapunk yet, so it's nice seeing him get it here in this color spread, even though it's definitely not canon. All right, so now jumping onto the first page of the chapter, we have Marcus Mars, the Itsumade, finally bursting through the Labo phase barrier, and surprisingly, he's not harmed whatsoever. Bonney got kicked through the barrier, and she was on the verge of death. Luffy went through twice, and he commented about how he almost died, but Marcus Mars just goes through the barrier with ease, and that is something we love to see. These Gorosei can tank that damage. Of course, it is a little bit different for them since they can regenerate, but hey, they can do it though, right? Yeah. Itsumade, he's looking pretty dang good, and while he's flying over, Jinbei takes note of how crazy Mars's haki actually is. And this is just one Gorosei member, mind you, but Jinbei's like, yo, this haki is unreal. And coming from Jinbei, that means a lot. Jinbei was a part of Whitebeard's crew. Jinbei was a part of Big Mom's crew. And it's like, yo, Jinbei has been hanging around Yonko his entire life. And you're telling me he's looking at Mars and saying, wow, this haki is unreal? Yo, I mean, that's saying something, right? That's saying something. Of course, in my opinion, the Gorosei haven't exactly put their Conqueror's Haki to good use yet, but it's nice to know that they have it though, right? You know, we haven't exactly seen any advanced Conqueror's attack or any special Conqueror's Haki waves yet, but if you were to just look at the stats on paper, they do seem pretty fire. So we go down a little bit. Jinbei finally reaches Zoro and he says, Zoro, this fight is over. We got to leave now. And that is when we see the aftermath of Zoro's opponent, Rob Lucci. Oh man. So as you may know, if it's not your first time here, then you may know that Rob Lucci is one of my favorite characters in the entire series. I'd put him in my top 3. And to see him done like this feels great. As a Rob Lucci fan, this is all we could ask for, right? He lost admirably. He lost standing tall. He's still standing. You know, Zoro's like, yo, like, this guy's still standing. Like, it's crazy. You know, Rob Lucci, in my opinion, looks pretty dang cool in this chapter. You know, here's the thing. With Rob Lucci, he was never going to win this battle against Zoro. There was just no way that was going to happen. So the most a Rob Lucci fan could ask for is that he goes down admirably. And I would argue that that is exactly what happens in this chapter. Because not only does he go down standing, or should I say he goes up? I'm not too sure. But yeah, not only does that happen, but he later gets praised by Marcus Mars, and he shows a shred of humanity and compassion towards Kaku. And it's like, yo, that's great. I love this, you know? But either way, I'm gushing too hard for this chapter right now. So yes, Jinbei shows up and he starts pulling Zoro away, who doesn't exactly want to go, right? It looks like Zoro still wants to fight Rob Lucci. Zoro really wants to just like knock him off his feet or something, which is kind of crazy considering that Rob Lucci can't even fight anymore, right? Like even when Jinbei shows up, literally Rob Lucci just starts growling, right? He goes back to his animal instincts. He goes to his leopard form and he's just like, gah, you know? So while Jinbei is pulling Zoro away, he uses Fishman Karate 5,000 brick shot to blow Lucci away and put some distance between them. Lucci, surprisingly again, tanks this. And when you look at him in the next panels, he's still in the same spot, right? Because you see the trees that are broken beside him and it's like, yo, Jinbei couldn't even really knock him back. Like, Lucci will not go down. Pretty crazy in my opinion, right? This just shows how strong awakened Zoans really are. Like, that durability, that stamina, it's no joke. It is no joke whatsoever. But yes, now that the fight is over and Lucci has properly received his L, he starts going out of his Zoan form. And to his surprise, his boss, Marcus Mars, shows up in front of him and says, hey, Robert Lucci of Cypher Pole Aegis 0, where is York? And you can see how shocked Lucci is to see Marcus Mars in this form. To be quite honest, I don't even know if Lucci knows who this is, right? Because Lucci has not seen these transformations before. So Lucci is going through what we went through last week when Oda dropped all 5 Gorosei designs in the double spread. So after Lucci gets past his initial shock, he gives Marcus Mars the entire rundown of what has been happening here on Agate Island. He's like, hey, 2 Vegapunks are up here. You got a couple of Straw Hats up here as well. York is in the control room. There's Seraphim down below. We got Cypher Pole agents down there as well. And it's like, damn, dude. No wonder why Rob Lucci is in CP0. This man is pretty efficient, right? Like, this feels like an actual report that you would receive from a subordinate. Yeah, Rob Lucci's putting in work when it comes to that intel. And he even has this black transponder snail as well, which is massive because that means that they now know about the Straw Hats' updated plans. Like, Rob Lucci says, hey, the Straw Hats are now preparing to escape from the back entrance of the Labo Stratum. They know about the giant ship that they want to hop on. They know that all the Straw Hats are going to meet there. And it's like, dang, dude, Rob Lucci has been putting in that work. Even Marcus Mars is pretty impressed by this. He's like, hey, splendid work. I have no further inquiries. Rob Lucci actually gave Marcus Mars more information than he even asked for. All he said was, where is York? And then Rob Lucci gave him all of that and so much more. Oh yeah, I almost forgot to mention this, but we also get an update on the Vegapunk timer. But last chapter, we learned that there were 7 minutes left before the message gets revealed. And in this chapter, Rob Lucci himself says that there are 6 minutes left before the message goes live. So before Marcus Mars flies off completely and saves York, Lucci says, hey, wait a minute, boss. Can you please do me a favor and save my injured buddy Kaku? And dude, this moment right here is one of the main reasons why I really love CP0, or CP9, I guess. CP0 is kind of hit or miss, right? The only characters in CP0 I actually like are just CP9 agents. But yeah, I really just love how Oda writes his villains in One Piece. While yes, they are bad people, while yes, they work for the opposing team, they're still people at the end of the day, right? They still have friends, they still have dreams, they still have families, and Rob Lucci shows that right here, saying, hey, can you please spare my boy Kaku? And it just makes a lot of sense given how much him and Kaku have been through. They grew up together, they joined CP9 together, they got fired together. Kaku and the rest of CP9 protected Rob Lucci's life after his fight with Luffy. It's like, yeah, like these are his boys, and I really like that Oda is showing Lucci in this light. And it really does make me wonder what is going to happen to Kaku. Ideally, I would love it if Marcus Mars spares Kaku and saves him because Rob Lucci did such a bang-up job here on Egghead Island. But if Marcus Mars doesn't save Kaku, what would Lucci do then? Would him and CP0 defect? Would he simply chalk it up to a bad day on the job? Because I'm not too sure, right? I mean, we see how Kizaru is doing. Kizaru had to kill his best friend and run the gauntlet on the rest of his friends. And he's not doing too well at the end of this chapter. So if this were to happen to Rob Lucci, I'm not too sure how he would take it. But yes, Marcus Mars, he doesn't say yes or no. He simply says, hey, it's going to be a little bit hard to save Kaku because it's hard to single out a lone insect when you're exterminating the hive, which is a pretty cool way to put it. I do love how all of the Gorosei and even the Celestial Dragons refers to humans as insects, because I really do feel like there is some deeper meaning behind why they chose the word insect out of any other insult out there. And not to mention, whenever Emu refers to people who carry the will of D, he calls them empty shells or husks, as if he's referring to an insect as well. So it's like, yo, there is something deeper at play here when it comes to insects. And one thing to just kind of nail in the insect theory, or, you know, mindset, is that Luffy, throughout the series, has been a very big fan of insects. I mean, hey, even here on Egghead Island, Luffy stopped what he was doing because he found a really cool beetle just crawling around on the island. It's like, yeah, Luffy, insects, Gorosei, non-insect people, there's something larger at play here that we're just not seeing. So I have a question about Lucci that I want to ask you guys. Do you think the spotted leopard hunt that Zoro used on Lucci will leave a scar? Or do you think Lucci, being an awakened Zoan, will heal right through that? Personally, I think it's going to scar, because it does remind me of Zoro versus Kaido. Well, not really, but you know, when Zoro fought Kaido, he used Ashita, and then Kaido was like, hey, that's gonna leave a mark. You definitely scarred me. So I think that Lucci being hit with this attack and him getting a scar from it wouldn't be super crazy. But yeah, I do want to gauge the room here. Like, what do you think about this? Do you think it'll be a scar? Do you not think so? I'm kind of curious. So now we cut down to the Fabrio phase of Egghead Island, and we see that Luffy has finally reunited with the Giants. And he's like, yo, I can't believe you guys are here. And then, yeah, they kind of pile on. They're like, yeah, like, I mean, it's been 2 years, man. We saw the newspaper and we just had to come. And when Dorian Brogy said that, I was like, yo, I'm glad somebody out there in the world of One Piece reads the newspaper and takes it seriously. Like, that's why I thought the Grand Fleet was going to show up, because they read the newspaper. They know that Luffy is here on Egghead Island and that he's sieged, right? So it's like, yo, like, why didn't anybody else come? We have so many allies in the world, but Dorian and Brogy are the ones who heeded our call. Well, technically, we didn't call anyone over, and that could be a good reason why the Grand Fleet didn't show up. But I'm just surprised that more people didn't think about coming in the first place. But I'm happy to see that the Giants are here, and they do kind of banter about the Sun God a little bit. You know, Brogy's like, hey, how do you know about this appearance, right? Like, Luffy, what is up with this? And then Luffy's like, huh? What are you talking about? And they're like, forget about it, Luffy. We'll have a lot of time to talk later. And man, I am a big fan of their back and forth here, because they just exude so much confidence throughout this dialogue, right? They're all expecting to leave this island. Nobody's expecting to lose. They're like, hey, yeah, we'll just talk about this on Elbaf, right? We'll talk tomorrow, Luffy. No big deal. You know, we'll just get out of here real quick. I really love how nonchalant they are in the face of 5 Gorosei members who are kind of pushed to the background, right? If you were to look at the first page where we cut to the Fabrio phase, you'd almost forget that we're fighting some of the top members of the world. Like, they're even trying to squeeze in to get some dialogue in, right? Like, Warkuri's like, whoa, Giants, and then Saturn's like, oh, what an unpalatable complication. And then right when they make their presence known to Dorian Brogy, they literally just say, hey, these are big beasts. They're kind of like jungle monsters from Elbaf. And it's like, damn, dude, you know, like these guys, the Gorosei, are being compared to regular jungle animals from their hometown. But now that they mention it though, I do wonder what the animals of Elbaf actually look like. Because so far, the only thing from Elbaf that we've seen that isn't human has been the fish. And Kid and Killer were like, yo, these fish are massive. So I kind of am expecting to see some big jungle creatures when we get there. And imagine if they're bigger than Saturn and even Warcody. That would be hilarious. But yes, Luffy says, hey guys, old timers, we're not supposed to be fighting here. We are supposed to be retreating, which, you know, just hammers it in again. Luffy and the crew do not want to fight everyone here. We want to escape as soon as possible. There's just something that's so futile about fighting the Navy in One Piece because they just have so many people on their side, right? Like, even if Luffy and the gang destroys all the Marines here, they're probably just gonna send more people from HQ. Like, this is gonna be an endless war. So yes, I do think retreating is the best option right now, especially since, as Luffy mentions it, we don't know how to hurt these guys, right? Like, every time we hurt Saturn, every time we hit Warcody, Jupiter, they just keep on regenerating. So for right now, at least, the only real option is to get the heck away. And the Giants are on board with this idea. They said, yo, don't worry, Luffy. Sanji already told us the game plan. And that is when we see Dory whip out the horn and he blows the signal for retreat. And I think it's just so awesome. I love how the Giants operate, man. I love how Oda is staying true to Viking nature here. But throughout all of this, we do get a really nice updated map of Egghead Island to see where some of the characters actually are, which is very much appreciated. So thanks to this map, we see that everyone on our side is trying to make their way to the giant ship. Now that the Vega Force 1 is gone, and now that the Giants are here, we are now switching over to this plan B. And what's interesting too is that even Nami and Usopp's group are trying to make it down to the giant ship, and I'm really curious to see how they're going to do that, considering the fact that they are on a sky island. Are they going to Kude burst off the Thousand Sunny? Is Usopp going to use a Milky Dial and create a little road path down to the giant ship? Or are they simply going to jump? I'm not exactly super sure, but another thing that the Nami and Usopp group have to worry about is the Labo Phase barrier, because that is still up. Even though Marcus Mars managed to fly through it and attack it, it's still standing. So one way or another, they're going to have to turn that off. But thankfully, since Marcus Mars is, you know, about to destroy the Labo Phase to stop the broadcast, maybe he's also going to turn off the barrier by accident. We're not exactly too sure how that's going to work yet, but also we do have to keep in mind that two Vegapunks are up there. We have Lilith and Edison. So maybe they have some idea as to how to turn off the barrier. But from what we've seen thus far, the only way to really turn it off is by going to the control room and manually typing in the code, because that is how York did it, and that's how Vegapunk did it too. So Edison and Lilith, they're gonna have to make their way to the control room, or just hope that York or Marcus turn it off unintentionally. Something funny about the Egghead Island map though, is that if you look at Sanji and Vegapunk, you can see that Oda decided to X out Vegapunk's eyes because he's presumed dead, which does make me wonder if Oda is going to bring him back to life at some point, right? Because so far, what's happened to Vegapunk is that Saturn stabbed him, Kizaru shot him, we saw his heartbeat monitor go out. So in my mind, if this were any other character in One Piece, I would say, hey, they're dead. But since it is Vegapunk we're talking about, since it is the world's smartest man here, I wouldn't be super shocked if he had a backup plan as to how to come back to life. It could have something to do with the 21 grams of memory that he talked about with Kuma. It could have to do with Punk Records or the Nomi Nomi no Mi, or straight up, he could just have another body ready to go. He could perform Ito Tensei on himself and just pop open a 7th satellite for all we know. So now that Dory has blown the horn, we see the rest of the Giants reacting to it, and they're like, hey, we got the signal to leave. And they're like, ah, thank goodness. Like, I didn't want to fight these guys. These Marines have no treasure on their ship. And it's like, dang, dude, not even these guys want to fight, right? They're even talking about how insignificant the Marines are. There's no merit to fighting them. And it's like, yeah, that makes sense, right? At this point, who can actually put up a fight against the Giants minus the Vice Admirals? And even then, the Vice Admirals are getting cooked. I love the Vice Admirals, but dude, if Tulsa's over here getting one shot by the back of Dory's axe, I don't think the rest of the VAs are going to fare that well in comparison. Which we'll talk more about them as time goes on, because they do make an appearance at the end of the chapter, which You know, if you really think about it, Oda left us with the Vice Admiral cliffhanger, which is kind of funny. But yeah, now that the Giants are retreating thanks to Dory's horn, Warcutty's like, hey, I'll show you how fruitless this is. I'll show you a horn of my own. And then he starts roaring from the top of his lungs. And with this roar comes Conqueror's Haki. This Conqueror's Haki blast is so strong that you see the Giants bending themselves, you see buildings being blown away, Luffy's scar and waistband got blown away, you see Marines passing out on the shoreline. It's like, yeah, these guys, man, they got some presence here, man. This Conqueror's Haki showing is not that bad. But when you really think about it though, you know, I hate being that guy, but at the end of the day, the only thing Warcutty managed to do was knock out his own people, right? Like, no Giants passed out, the Straw Hats didn't pass out, no, the Marines passed out. It's like, bro, friendly fire, man. It's kind of like when Saturn, like, blew up that one Marine's head for looking at him. It's like, oh, that's cool and all, Saturn. I love that you had this amazing showcase of strength, but you're hurting your own people, man. Like, you're hurting people trying to help you. So with this roar, though, he does say that the reason he's doing it is to drive home the futility of escape. He wants to show these guys that they have no chance of leaving this island alive. And I like that. Because beforehand, I was wondering how the Gorosei would prioritize Egghead Island. Like, would they focus on the broadcast? Would they focus on York, the Mother Flame? I wasn't exactly sure where the Straw Hats fell on that list. But it looks like they are up there, right? We have Warcutty, we have Saturn, we have Jupiter, all trying to stop Straw Hat Luffy. Whereas, in terms of the broadcast, only Marcus Mars went up to the Labo phase. And hey, Nasujudo isn't even present in this chapter. He's still running around taking down the Pacifista. So it's like, dang, we really do have a majority of the Gorosei trying to beat Luffy. And I do want to put emphasis on the word trying, because they're not succeeding, man. So after this roar, Warcutty spins up in the air and tries to attack Luffy and the Giants. Unfortunately though, for him, the Giants come together and they block his attack with their sun shields. And it's like, man, the Gorosei, dude, what is going on, dude? Is Dory and Brogy just that powerful? Or the Gorosei just that weak? I'm not too sure. I'm really not too sure. I'm starting to lean towards the notion that the Giants are just those guys. And somebody brought this up last video, but they were like, hey, Sai, don't forget that Big Mom said that with the power of the Giants behind her, she could rule the world. And honestly, I never forgot when Big Mom said that. But I just never believed Big Mom, because up until that point in the story, the Giants haven't looked that great, right? We had Haruden, we have John the Giant, we have Dory Brogy, Oimo, and Kashi, and none of them performed that well. But here we are, final saga, man, and these guys are finally showing us what the Giants are about. So yeah, I never believed Big Mom up until this point, but now I see it. If Dory and Brogy are stopping Warcutty, it's like, yo, who can stop Dory and Brogy? Maybe we need Mr. 3 here. You know, maybe Mr. 3 should have been offered the Warlord position and should still be around. I'm not too sure. But yeah, the Giants are looking really good in this chapter, man. And one thing that I thought was kind of interesting is that Warcutty turned his 2 front tusks into blades, which I thought was pretty crazy. It kind of reminds me of Saturn and how he can spit out venom balls, how his legs are now venomous, how he has these rubbery attacks. The Gorosei more or less are just straight up anomalies. Maybe this is Hoki lore. I'm not exactly too sure. Whenever I try to look up information about the Hoki, I don't exactly get too many results out there. And from at least what I've seen, none of the articles mentioned that the Hoki can turn their tusks into blades. So yeah, Warcutty's attack here is pretty insane. But of course though, the sword tusks do not help him whatsoever, because they just straight up cannot bypass the Giants' shield. So we go on and we see Warcutty talk to the Giants a little bit, and he's like, hey, what quirk of destiny ties you together? Do you have any idea who that man is? Referring to Luffy, of course. And I really like Dory and Brogy's response, because I thought they were going to say that Luffy is the sun god, the god of Elbaf, the guy they worship. But they don't say that. Instead, they simply say that Luffy is their buddy, which is awesome, right? Like, the Sun God, it's just additive to why they like Luffy. Base level though, they just like him because of what happened at Little Garden. They just like being friends with him. The answer is so simple and so straightforward that it just feels genuine. So after giving Warcody that response, they straight up slap him with the shield, and they use separation or split skylda, whichever translation you're reading, and they send him flying back. Saturn takes note of this opening, and he starts spewing out venomous balls towards them, and this kind of reminds me of what Magellan did back at Impel Down, because he used a similar ability. But yeah, he starts spewing the balls towards them. Luffy notices, and he steps up to bat. Quite literally. So Luffy grabs a tree, just yanks it out of the ground. He uses his Bugs Bunny teeth, and he carves out a baseball bat from that, pulls out a baseball cap, and also pulls out some black paint to coat the baseball bat, and then he slaps all the balls away. Okay, so there's a lot to take in here. I will dial it back. I'll go through this slowly. But first up, this is a very Looney Tunes ability. This is straight up something that happens in Tom and Jerry, where they just whip a baseball bat out of nowhere. And to add insult to injury, you know, like I said, he paints the baseball bat black. He finds the time to do that. He finds the time to put a hat on. He even puts his trademark 56 on the bat, which I think is hilarious, right? Because Luffy still thinks he has the Gomu Gomu no Mi, which is Gomu, so 5-6. But also he likes the number 56 in general. So yeah, there's kind of a double meaning as to why he has the 56 here. But yeah, either way, man, it's kind of getting to the point where I kind of just feel bad for all of Luffy's opponents, right? Like, how do you fight this, bro? Like, you're over here taking the fight seriously, you're spitting venom balls at him, and then the guy just starts playing baseball, you know? You're trying to stop this guy from doing anything, and then he turns you into pizza. It's like, I don't know, man. Like, the only real way to beat him is just to wait for his Gear 5 stamina to run out. And even then, it's like, you have to deal with his crew, right? Because like 20 chapters ago, when Luffy was out of stamina, Saturn tried to finish him off. But that's when Sanji and Frankie stood up, and they started holding Saturn back a little bit. It's like, yo, defeating Luffy is just not that simple. So yeah, Luffy hits the balls back, they end up exploding, and then Dory and Brogy are like, hey, that's a big W. And then Luffy's like, no. You guys don't understand. These guys, they can regenerate. And that is when we see Saturn, Warcody, and Jupiter's ominous shadows growing in the distance. And they're like, yo, how do we even beat these guys? And it looks like not even the Giants have any real idea what's going on. They're like, hey, I haven't heard about any race that can regenerate. I don't know about any abilities that allow people to regenerate like this. So now I'm really wondering how we're gonna figure out how to hurt the Gorosei. Like, who's gonna give us this information? Are we gonna have to learn about the Void Century? Are we gonna have to ask the Vegapunks to analyze them afterwards? Are we gonna have to ask some celestial dragons? I'm not exactly sure, man. But yeah, so Dory, Brogy, Luffy, now that they've blown up the Gorosei, they are running back to the giant ship. And I can't tell which one of them is saying it. I believe it's Brogy. But he says, hey, we may be running away right now, but I still count this as our victory. And I would agree. Like, even though they have done no substantial damage to the Gorosei, they're still retreating. And they're making it off pretty well. Like, if you really think about it, Saturn and the Gorosei haven't even done any damage to Luffy. Or even Dory and Brogy. Like, yeah, they ate Luffy, but he escaped shortly afterwards. You know, Jupiter lost his head. They blocked Warcody's attack. Saturn couldn't even hit Luffy in the span of 3 chapters. And it's like, yeah, this is an overwhelming W for the Straw Hats and the Giants. Like, I'm almost rooting for the Gorosei now. Like, I really want them to get at least one hit in. You know, it doesn't have to be crazy, but just one hit. So yeah, going down a little bit more, we see that Nami and the rest of the crew are trying to push the Thousand Sunny off the Labo phase, or at least that's what it looks like. I'm not exactly super sure. It looks like they're trying to push it off of Usopp's bamboo shoots at the very least. But yeah, Nami says that they are on their way. We see Zoro and Jinbei on their way to the Thousand Sunny as well. And then that is when we cut over to Bonney, Frankie, Atlas, and Kuma. And we see that the Vice Admirals have appeared in front of the giant ship. We have Vice Admiral Red King, Vice Admiral Guillotine, and Vice Admiral Pomsky. Almost forgot his name. Sorry, guys. But yes, they showed up in front of the giant ship. And honestly, I am not threatened by them whatsoever. I mean, Frankie could probably handle them. Bonney can probably take one. And then, of course, we have a bunch of no-named giants just off screen. And we saw how powerful Dory and Brogy were. So I do believe that a couple of these giants can handle the Vice Admirals too. As much as I love the Vice Admirals and as much as I root for them, I just really cannot envision a future where they squeak out any W's, because there's no way they're gonna kill Bonney, there's no way they're gonna beat Frankie, and there's no way they're gonna survive if the rest of the Straw Hats show up here. Like, I just can't imagine what's gonna go down. I think their best chance is if Nasujuro shows up, because we do know that Nasujuro is running around the coast of Egghead Island, disabling the Pacifista, so maybe he'll eventually show up here and he's going to assist them. And you know what? If that happens, then we can have a conversation about the Vice Admirals winning. But right now, I'm not exactly super sure. As far as what the Vice Admirals can do, though, we do know that Red King has this crazy mechanical Zephyr arm. We do know that Pomsky has an Otter Devil Fruit, and he also has a Seashell Sword. So that's kind of cool. As far as Guillotine goes, the guy in the middle, we're not super sure. He does have this weird sword haircut going on, so maybe his ability has something to do with that. But even then, I just don't see them winning this battle. So now that we know where 4 out of the 9 Vice Admirals are, I am curious to see where the other 5 will show up, because we do know that Doll and Bluegrass are riding a Sea Beast onto Egghead Island, so I wouldn't be shocked if they join these guys pretty soon, or if they run into Sanji, right? Whenever I see a group of women, I always just imagine them running into Sanji, so I feel like that's in the cards, and if that's the case, I do wonder how Sanji's gonna handle himself. I'm really just hoping it doesn't turn out into a long, drawn-out gag. Like, imagine all of the Straw Hats made it to the giant ship, but Sanji is being held up because he can't hit Doll or Bluegrass. Like, that would be a little bit painful. So hopefully Sanji, being as fast as he is, just, you know, speed blitzes right through them. I want to believe that Sanji can keep his eyes on the prize and just run past them. Of course, he is carrying Vegapunk, but let's be real. How heavy is Vegapunk, right? There's no way he's actually weighing Sanji down. So now, on to the final page, we see another update on Egghead Island, and we see that Marcus Mars has finally made it to the control room, and he is now asking York where the broadcast is coming from. Well, he actually doesn't say that. He says, where is the room displayed on the monitor? So it seems like he thinks that if he destroys that room, the broadcast will stop. But personally, I don't think it's going to be that easy. But, you know, that is yet to be seen. York straight up does not give him an answer in this chapter because she's just so scared. She's like, oh my god, it's a giant bird monster in front of me. Like, what do I do here, right? I don't blame her. But also, in this same room, though, is Kaku. So I do wonder if Marcus Mars will respect Rob Lucci and free Kaku, which shouldn't be super hard, right? I mean, you have York, you have Kaku in a room. How hard would it actually be to just break Kaku's bubble and release him? I don't think it would be that hard. And hey, even though Kaku is still injured from his fight with the Seraphim, he is still an able-bodied person, so he should be able to help Marcus Mars, or at least Lucci or York. So I do think there is a lot of merit for the Itsumare Mars to actually free him here. But we don't see him in this chapter, so we'll see how that turns out in the next couple of weeks. So the next update we get here on Egghead Island is about Kizaru. And as expected, he's not looking too good. He is pained after his fight against Luffy, and he's also pained because he killed his best friend. Yeah, Kizaru is not having a good day here. One of the Marines say, hey Kizaru, are you hurt? Let us treat you. And he straight up says, my wounds run deep. Yeah, I definitely feel bad for him. And this goes back to what I said earlier with how Oda portrays villains. I really do like it. I love how they're just not one-dimensional evil beings. No, they have hearts, man. Even though they work for the wrong side, they still have heart at the end of the day. And I'm still really shocked that Kizaru went through and killed Vegapunk, since it's hitting him this deeply, right? You would think with this much remorse that he would say, hey, maybe I should help Vegapunk escape. But that wasn't the case whatsoever. So based on Kizaru's dialogue in this chapter, I really don't see him doing much else here on this island, right? The deed has already been done. Bonney is safe with the Straw Hats. Kuma is safe with the Straw Hats. Sentomaru's in custody. Vegapunk's dead. I really do feel like his job is done here. And if he were going to betray the Marines, he would have done it a long time ago. Speaking of Sentomaru though, I really do hope that we get to see a Kizaru and Sentomaru interaction pretty soon, where Sentomaru's like, hey, uncle, why did you do it, right? Like, you could have just quit your job, man. Like, I hope his old friends don't let him off easy, right? Like, if the other Vegapunk see Kizaru, I hope they're like, hey, Why did you kill him? Oddly enough, though, with everything that's been happening here to Kizaru in mind, I feel like this pushes the Bonney for Nakama stocks upwards, because this is very reminiscent of what happened at Ohara. Because at Ohara, Aokiji killed his best friend Saul, and after doing that, he let Nico Robin escape, and Nico Robin at the time was just a little girl. And now here we are in Egget Island, and Kizaru just killed his best friend, and now that he doesn't want to get up anymore, technically, he's helping Bonney escape in that aspect, right? Kizaru could easily get back up and, try to fight the Straw Hats one more time, but he's not going to do that. So his complacency here kind of mirrors Aokiji in that aspect. So it really does feel like Oda could be hinting that Bonney will be the next Nakama. And of course, the color spread at the beginning of this chapter does kind of do that some favors as well. So now, on to the final update here on Egget Island. We see that the ancient giant from 200 years ago has finally arisen, and reportedly he is much larger than the giants from Elbaf, which is something I didn't think was possible. This guy is huge, and not only is he big, but he's completely unfazed by the fires of Egget Island. Like, the Marines are kind of shocked. They're like, yo, the forest is on fire, but this giant doesn't even care. Yeah, this guy's crazy, man. This guy's crazy. So we do get some dialogue from the ancient robot, and he says, hey, Joy Boy, forgive me. And based on the way the dialogue box is formatted, it seems like it's obviously, an inner thought. But I do wonder if this is the voice of all things, because Zunisha kind of did the same thing, where Zunisha thought things, but that is also how the voice of all things shot out to other characters like Luffy and Momonosuke, but we don't really get too much insight there yet. I kind of wish we did see Luffy here, reacting to the giant, or at least, hearing the giant. But either way, yes, this guy is awake, and apparently this giant has let Joy Boy down, just like the rest of Joy Boy's Nakamas. Hey, I don't know, man. Zunisha said that he committed a grave crime a long time ago. He said, Joy Boy, this is reminiscent. I feel bad. And it's like, yo, what happened to Joy Boy in the past? Did all of his friends betray him? Did everybody let this guy down? Like, the Void Century sounds like it's going to be a really sad tale between Zunisha, this ancient robot, Joy Boy's apology letter to Poseidon. It's like, yo, what happened back then, man? I'm curious more now than ever. But yes, now that this giant is awake, I truly do believe that we will be leaving this island scot-free. I mean, hey, Dory, Brogy, Luffy, they managed to deal with 3 Gorosei members, and they're now skirting away. If this ancient robot shows up and covers their rear, in my opinion, they're pretty much home free. Like, we don't know how strong this guy actually is, but we do know how strong Zunisha is in comparison. We know how strong the giants are, right? Zunisha being another Joy Boy Nakama, and then the giants with their size have been no joke here. So I really do expect some great things out of this robot. And hey, even if this giant robot can't fight for some reason, I do think we will get a lot of lore out of it. I'm not too sure if the robot himself will say anything to Luffy, but the Gorosei most likely do have a lot of inside information as to what this guy actually is. So I'm really excited to see the dialogue exchange when they meet up. But yeah, that is it for this chapter, guys. Overall, I thought this was a really great chapter. We got to see a little bit of everything. We got to see what all of the Straw Hats are doing. I believe the only Straw Hat we don't see outright is Nico Robin. Let me see. I'm scrolling up on the chapter right now. Where are Usopp and the rest of the guys? Okay, so I just scrolled through the chapter and I couldn't see Robin anywhere. Maybe she's still sleeping. Maybe she's still taking a nap from her fight with the Seraphim and York. But we're not exactly super sure. She didn't even appear in the mini-map either. Another character we don't see in this chapter is Stussy. But, last we saw, Stussy got stabbed by Lucci and she was being tended to by Chopper. So I doubt she'd even be awake right now. But yeah, a couple of missing characters. Does it mean anything? We will see. I know some people are still thinking that the Blackbeard Pirates might have captured Robin. I don't think that's the case. I feel like we would have known if that happened, just because we have a lot of crazy observation hockey on this island. But yeah, either way though, what do you guys think about this chapter? Let me know down below. How do you feel about Kizaru? How do you feel about Lucci, the Straw Hats, the Ancient Robot, York, the Itzuma? Like, there's so much here, man. There's so much. Oda gave us a great conversational chapter to accompany the 3-week break. But yeah, I'll catch you guys later. My name is Sai, and I'm signing out.